Hello and welcome to Wednesday Debate Live with Tagreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be talking Egypt's pivotal role in Africa, and as we all know, ever since President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi assumed office back in 2014, he has established a new era in strengthening unity and cooperation between Egypt and the African countries, declaring that Egypt will continue to endeavor side by side with the African countries to achieve sustainability and also to boost joint efforts and find solutions to challenges that the continent has suffered from for decades and have prevented the realization of dreams of its people. Egypt has long played an important role in supporting African countries, affirming keenness to enhance cooperation with Africa, to consolidate security and stability, to combat terrorism, and to develop energy transition, securing food and fight climate change, and more. Well, more concerning our cooperation with Africa and in continuation to our top stories earlier in the day, President al-Sisi attended the inauguration of the second edition of Egypt International Cooperation Forum, Egypt ICF, at the new administrative capital. The president said that the forum constitutes an increasing momentum in preparing for Egypt's hosting of the COP27 that will be held in Sharm el-Sheikh this November. The forum includes a number of main axes within the framework of mobilizing resources and financing for the agenda of the issue of climate change and its repercussions, also reviewing the national efforts and measures taken in that regard. The forum includes holding a roundtable on promoting the investable projects in Egypt in preparation for the presentation at the Global Climate Summit, COP27, that will be held in Sharm el-Sheikh next November. And on this important forum and also Egypt's cooperation with Africa, we're really honored to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Mohamed Hegazy, former assistant to the Foreign Minister. Thank you so much, Ambassador Hegazy, for joining us.
My pleasure, Terry.
And together we'll be reading more than one important headline concerning Africa and the second edition of the International Cooperation Forum, ICF, came timely, Ambassador, today. We've seen a very rich African presence. This in addition, of course, that Egypt is drawing the roadmap before the COP27.
Indeed, in preparation to such an important gathering of world leaders and specialists in one of the most important topics and challenges that facing humanity, which is climate change, and the COP27 in November, preparing the African position and consulting with our African brothers is important. So the second edition of the International Cooperation Forum came on a timely manner, and I think what has been transcended and came out of today's session shows how important Africa is and how important is the agenda for the climate challenge and for the COP27, where Egypt is representing its continent, since President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was the leading leader in the discussion over the climate change and how Africa is in dire need of the international assistance. The pledges and commitments hasn't been really in place, and Africa left alone to confront, as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, both the repercussions and the outcome of the external use of 20 countries and abuse to climate change. I think what has been with us for a couple of years now, that Africa was left without the committed 100 billion US dollar of support, and Africa has to mitigate and confront the ramification without really sincere and true commitment from the world community. So the call of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi today is of utmost importance. I think John Kerry also, in the American Special Envoy for Climate Change, I think he gave the same message, and we on an African soil are heading for a conference on our land in Sharm el-Sheikh, where Africa voice will be heard, and to make it clear we are calling the international community to adhere to its previous commitments, and I think the implementation will be the word that will be heard in Sharm el-Sheikh, implementing the strategies that will allow Africa to reach the climate change goals and to confront the ramification of being in a world where 20 economies have caused all the emissions and the damages to climate. So this gathering came also in a very important time, where African economies are really crippled because of the impact on oil and food prices and the disruption of the food value chain, as well as the increase of the oil prices and its effect on African economies. So when it comes to climate, we need world solidarity. This is the aim of the ICF today. The international conference is a key to establish a position that we will carry further in November in Sharm el-Sheikh, and we will call the international community to achieve what has been promised in many other rounds of COPs, particularly the one in Glasgow. The commitment hasn't been met, and time has come that Africa gave its point of view quite clear and include its demands in the outcome of COP27.
Yes, very important forum that comes timely, and as Your Excellency have mentioned, and this is actually the motto, from pledges to implementation. Indeed. Because it's high time now for implementation, helping transform the sense of financial commitments into real opportunities. And this is what is expected in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, and the COP27. We have more than one message for His Excellency President Sisi during this important forum, when he said that only 20 countries are causing 80% of emissions and the effects of climate change, and it is fair and objective that there should be support for the developing countries in Africa. So Egypt is always speaking as the voice of Africa.
Absolutely. As I said, since Paris, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi brought the African claims and just requirements to the attention of the world community. This is a global issue that cannot be confronted in one part of the world and leaving the weak part, which is in Africa, alone without support. So I think what Sharm el-Sheikh will do is to add value to this call, is to insist on Africa takes what it deserves, and I'm sure also that the COP27 will be a true African conference where the world community will adhere to their commitment, where Africa implementation word will be heard and our agenda will be included in the international agenda. To do that, you need, as the ICF doing, to implant your thoughts and idea, to consult more with world leaders and to consult among ourselves. I think an appreciation has to go to Dr. Rania Al-Mashat for the effort that she has done. I attended the ICF first episode and it was such a great success. So the second, under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, version of the ICF, means that we are heading truly to a very important African position that can be reflected, heard, and included into the international agenda. I think this effort has started in Glasgow, but it will be heard in an African land in Egypt.
Yes, we have more than one important partnership between Egypt and the world powers in that respect. We've seen also the speech of the U.S. Envoy for Climate Affairs, John Kerry, which he delivered at the forum, looking forward to cooperating, Egypt cooperating with the United States to mitigate the effects of climate change. So we can see that Egypt now is the point and the center of attraction, let me say. Egypt's presidential diplomacy has been doing a lot, speaking the voice of Africa and bringing about a sense of renaissance in African relations.
Indeed, the African-Egyptian relations is one of the pillars that has been laid foundation by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. But what is important also, that we are dealing with issues that pertaining to our concern the most. The time when illegal immigration was high, Egypt dealt with this phenomena to introduce to Africa and the world one of the best model, both legally, security, and others. So when it comes to terrorism, you will find that Egypt also was in the forefront. When it comes to climate change, you will find also Egypt is one of the voices of Africa and one of the countries that adheres to the rules of the international community and include our agenda in the proper format to be respected by the others.
Yes.
I think we will live with climate change for decades to come. Mm-hmm. And when it was, as I said, to illegal immigration or to terrorism, Egypt was also in the forefront. When it comes to climate change, and as I said, it will be the issue and the challenge that we will stay with it for decades to come. And Egypt will be always in front. And the outcome of Sharm el-Sheikh will also add value to our international partnership with the world community on behalf of our continent. And I'm sure that what we are doing today in the new capital city shows that when Africa also is building, we are building smart cities, yes. Green cities, cities to the latest modeling and the latest urban development. And yeah. That's exactly what all Africa now is calling the international community to help in getting rid of the informal sector, in developing urban strategy that will assist the climate issue. Although Africa is among the least in causing emission, Africa is willing to cooperate, to work with our partner, but we need our partners also to understand the need of Africa and to start implementing and adhere to their pledges and commitments.
Yes, well, it has been a very busy schedule actually, and we've seen lots of important meetings tackling climate investment funds, for instance. At a meeting that was held with Mafalda Dwati, the CEO of the Climate Investment Funds, Prime Minister Madbouli said it is time to put climate adaptation programs into effect and also provide them with the necessary funding. So Egypt today is attracting the world's attention concerning the future of Africa, and that the future is in Africa. And we are all securing that future. In his word at the opening of the forum today, Egypt's top diplomat, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, stressed that Egypt, during the presidency of the 27th session of the Conference of the Parties, COP27, will adopt a clear approach aiming at addressing the gaps and the current deficiencies in the global system in dealing with climate change and enhancing a sense of confidence among the parties in order to implement the Paris Agreement with an accelerated pace. So Egypt is attaching real importance to this file and talking with the whole world prior and in preparation for the mega event, the COP27.
Indeed, the speech given by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and the speech given by Mr. Sameh Shoukry has in common a very clear idea about the global confrontation and the international solidarity in confronting one of the world's most important challenges, which is climate change. As I said, when in the past decades illegal immigration or terrorism were part of our international agenda, today climate change will be the top, will be in the top of the international agenda for decades to come. And I think we need to put the advice given by all that the world community has to work in Sharm el-Sheikh towards implementation. Implementation, I guess, is the key word of all of us. It is a global agenda, but Africa is in need. There is commitments that hasn't been met, so time has come that we all help Africa to implement the strategies that will allow our countries to confront the challenge And it's not about only mitigation, but it is also about adaptation. But implementation should be the key word that we all should adhere to. And I think supporting Africa will render good to the efforts given by all of us to confront the climate change.
Yes, world countries are appreciating the very important role that Egypt plays in that respect and in preparing for the COP27. U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry, spoke about climate change during the forum today and stressed that Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, COP27 may restore, as he said, the world's senses and help find solutions to climate change, revealing that 18 countries in Africa are affected by climate change. So the statements and also lots of international representation reflect the important role that is played by Egypt in opening world discussions regarding climate change and promoting global solidarity concerning this important file. We have more than one important and global forum taking place and tackling Egypt's support to Africa. For instance, Egypt hosted the fourth session of the AU Specialized Technical Committee, a very important meeting, talking with ministers of local development from all over Africa and representatives present. We'll talk about that, Ambassador, but let's first check the report.
Pleasure.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli delivered a speech on behalf of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi at the fourth regular session of the Committee of African Ministers of Local Development. Madbouli said that Egypt's hosting of the fourth session of the African Union Specialized Technical Committee's meetings on public service, local governments, urban development and decentralization reflects the state's commitment to everything that achieves the advancement of the continent within the framework of achieving Africa's 2063 agenda. The Prime Minister began his speech by conveying the greetings of President Sisi to the ministers, ambassadors and representatives of the African Union and UN bodies. According to the Prime Minister, the President stated that Egypt is proud of its contributions to discussing, approving and developing charters related to local governance, decentralization and public utility management. He also expressed the Egyptian state's keenness and interest in the African depth, its effective contribution to achieving the goals of Africa's 2063 agenda, as well as consolidating the foundations of integration and cooperation between the countries of the continent to bring prosperity to its peoples. Furthermore, President Sisi stressed Egypt's endeavor to put all its experiences, either developmental, urban, economic, security, or political, to serve African countries and governments, adding that infrastructure, urban growth, and opportunities for a decent life for local communities are the basis for confronting the challenges facing Africa. He added that the trend towards supporting local administrations, decentralization, as well as enhancing the efficiency of public management mechanisms for facilities and services are of great importance in light of the requirements of climate action and dealing with climate change. The Prime Minister also pointed out that Egypt, within the context of its final preparations to hold COP27, will be keen to present the challenges facing the continent and its local governments to support their ability to adapt to the effects of climate change and contribute effectively to climate action without negatively affecting their legitimate rights to development. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli concluded the President's speech by reiterating his welcome to the visiting delegations, emphasizing that he is looking forward to the outcomes of this important session, stressing on the commitment of the Egyptian state to support all African orientations concerned with achieving local development.
So the forum was very important in conveying the President's message and the state's keenness, Ambassador Hegazy, for the effective contribution to the African agenda as a whole.
Yes, definitely. Egypt is very active in implementing the African agenda heading for 2063 African aims and goals and hopes. And one of the most important committees of the 14 committees of the African Union was committee number 8, where ministers from all over Africa in the field of local development, housing and planning were meeting together in Cairo 2 days on an expert level. And the 31st of August was the ministerial, where 24 ministers and deputy minister were around, and 72 experts from all over the continent. 37 African countries were presented. They have discussed many important issues pertaining to local development, in particular the establishment of a Supreme Council for local authorities, where I had the honor to preside this session. Was a great document, very important document. If we establish this Supreme Council as one of African Union mechanism, that will help a great deal dealing with challenges on a local level. As you know, Taghreed, all challenges has to be met on a local level. As we said, climate change, terrorism, illegal immigration, all agriculture, food security, water security, as well as even facing the culture and educational challenge. You need to face it first on a local level. So the African local drive is very important. As you know, Egypt also is hosting the North African Regional Office for the UCLG Africa, which is the African grouping or organization of African cities here in Cairo, where the governor of Cairo and Caliubia are members of the Executive Council. So inviting the organization, the African Union as the mother organization, to Cairo and to host their very important meeting of tripartite committees that held their meetings on the 29th and the 30th. In this discussion, they talk about the African Charter for Decentralization, but what was important the most, I read, is the outcome of this gathering.
The Cairo Declaration.
The Cairo Declaration. They listened to the Egyptian delegation in presenting Haya Karima, and Haya Karima was shared between Minister Hisham Amna of Local Development, Dr. Hisham Al-Hilbawi, our colleague expert in the field, as well as, of course, the overall discussion on Haya Karima. And the outcome was, why Haya Karima or decent life only for Egypt? Why not for Africa? From this notion, decent life for Africa has established itself and became one of the motto of this conference and the one before, which is AfriCity, the summit of the African cities in Kisumu in Kenya on the 17th of May, who adopted also the notion of Africanizing, if I may use the term, Africanizing Haya Karima. And Egypt promised, Minister Amna promised to put, and Dr. Hala Said also has taken part in the afternoon session and give a very important speech about Haya Karima as well. So we brought to the attention of the African Union, upon the instruction of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the notion of Haya Karima as a presidential initiative that is valid not only for Egypt, but also for the whole African continent, decent life for Africa. And I think we will build on this invitation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to further enhance the African involvement in decent life in all its dimensions, because decent life is one of the world's most important integrated initiative in urban and rural development, where 58 million people.
Renowned African personalities that we met on the sidelines as Nile TV had covered the forum, this prestigious forum. His Excellency Mohamed, the Ambassador of Cameroon, the Dean of African Ambassadors, said that he was very much proud of what Egypt is actually collaborating with Africa under the directives of President Sisi, and highlighted also Decent Life Initiative as one of the noble initiatives for Africa. Let's watch his bite.
Please.
it is a wonderful occasion for our African countries to meet, especially during this time where every government and every continent is trying to make, to empower the local governments. And as you know, Egypt has developed a very good program in that level, and the presence of all ministers here and also the representative of the local governments is an important occasion for us to come together to try and exchange our views, the policies, and also to see the way forward. And as you said, the Prime Minister said it now, we are all on the same boat. We have to work together, and we are going to do it. And I'm sure that after this meeting of this morning, we are going to come with a document and a declaration that will show the way forward. As you know, Africa will progress not only by governments, but also by the people. And you have to empower people. Empowering people means that we need to give them the administration, of course, the human resources, and the planning, and also investment. That's why we have to be together. This is the reason why we are having this. The African Union has its plan, and everybody should know what is the plan and what are, the direction we are.
So, Excellency, more than one impression and more than one renowned African personality was attending. Among them was His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adjio, the Commissioner of Political Affairs, Peace and Security. And he talked to Nile TV more about cooperating together and how Egypt and Africa are both working hand in hand for sustainability and for a brighter future as well. Yeah.
In promoting effective public administration, local development that works for the people, that works for the youth, that creates jobs, that empowers women, and that also protects the rights of children. So this is a very important platform. As we in the African Union, we stand ready to support our member states in implementing the African Charter that was set up for this purpose, in encouraging cross-fertilization of ideas and concepts, like in Egypt, the decent life that the government of the Arab Republic has embraced, and how it can be replicated in other areas. We are also working with partners, the ECA, the African Development Bank, and others, to focus on local development. Because once you have local development, you'll be able to reduce the poverty that comes with over-urbanization, rapid, unsustainable urbanization in the capital cities. So this STC is very, very critical and fundamental to the future of our continent. We have to integrate good political governance into delivering the services that our people want. And that transformation, of course, rests on infrastructure, it rests on sustainable agriculture, it rests on empowering the youth, it rests on women participation in political life, it rests on a whole of society approach. It rests on effectively countering terrorism, violent extremism, transnational organized crime. It rests on a number of factors. And you mentioned the health sector, and our continent faced COVID-19 pandemic impact just like many other continents and countries in the world. But we thank God that we have been able, through the collective efforts of the international community, that no one should be left behind in addressing this. And that is why learning from Egypt, learning from each other in the African Union will serve Africa well and contribute to our transformation. Egypt is now one of the top 3 countries with the largest economy. Egypt is transforming like many of our member states, and we encourage that axis of promoting exchanges and further deepening our democracy and providing collective security for development to thrive. If we do more with local governance, with public administration, with decentralization, and human settlements in the way where we can uplift our democratic practice, I believe the future is Africa.
Now. Well, it was actually a very important forum that we're proud of. Final message, Ambassador.
Well, the two events, Tagreed, shows that Africa, in the heart and mind of Egypt, leadership and people, and media as well.
Yes, definitely. It is long live Egypt, long live Africa. I thank so much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Mohamed Hegazy, former assistant to the Foreign Minister. Thank you, Ambassador, for coming live to Nile TV studios tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. I'm Tagreed Hussein. Many thanks for watching.